Anchorman.
You,
You smell like a sweaty baboon.
Let's get that one.
I hope you freeze up and die.
Oh,
okay,
come
your
on.
mics are hot, so what do you think is the best athletic? What other kind of wearables have you used? Has it just been the Fitbit?
No, it's just been the Fitbit, and really because, I like to keep track of steps. I like to keep track of just sleep patterns.
Yeah. Oh,
especially
so you do wear it at night,
I do wear it at night because especially during the season, it helps me kind of know what's going on.
Okay.
So
I get I have a Pebble, and Pebble always emails me once a week with all the
Okay.
data, and it says we don't have any sleeping data on you. Where you watch the sleep. I don't understand. I want to take it off and not have to worry about that.
Yeah, I don't mind sleeping. The only thing that can be annoying is if you turn a certain way, your watch lights up when you move, and if sometimes my wife will be like in the middle of the night, I'll be asleep and I'll roll over and it will just light. It should just be like what's that? Because you're just trained to identify. So.
Okay, gentlemen, we are good to go. So you're live.
And welcome, College Football Now, with a little wearable talk to bring us in. For those of you on Facebook Live, you got to hear us talk, or not me, because I wasn't talking, but a little bit about that. But it is our weekly show. I'm Brant Parsons. That is our national college football writer, Matt Murschel, and this is where we make our picks for the week. We take questions. We have some questions on Twitter. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you can ask questions throughout the show. I will see them here, and we will get to them along the way. If you're not on Facebook Live, go ahead and get on Facebook. Like the page, Orlando Sentinel Sports, and then you get us on Facebook Live there, and you can answer or ask us questions along the way. I'm going to go through some games across the country.
Yeah.
Also some state games. Record-wise, heading into this week, I'm one game better than you so far on picks.
It doesn't matter, man. The record doesn't matter. It's at the very end who picks the right team.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
There you go.
Let's start off with a game which to me it's not a marathon. It might be a sprint as to who's going to be sprinting to the hot seat. Number 18 LSU visiting Auburn Saturday night on the Plains. 6 p.m. kickoff on ESPN. Auburn, this is fascinating. They've lost 6 straight SEC home games. And that's hard to do. Yeah. Malzahn and his staff have a big buyout, though, so maybe the hot seat doesn't heat up too much for them. LSU comes in. They did win last week over Mississippi State, but they're still struggling on offense. Danny Etling has taken over quarterback for Brandon Harris. Auburn, meanwhile, they will try to win this game on the ground. Cameron Petway has been their star running back. They lead the SEC in rushing yards per game. And a footnote, we're talking about coaches on the hot seat. Les Miles, one SEC win away from tying the school record, which is held by Charles McClendon. It's a little factoid there. He almost didn't have a chance to go after that.
Yeah.
We've got there are bigger games that we're going to talk about, but this one intrigued me because both of these coaches, if you lose this game, you could see the heat turning up on them. Les Miles, LSU still not living up to the expectations. The offense still very bland. Auburn, we know all the issues that are going on with Auburn. I am going to pick Auburn in this game. I had to look down and check. I was like, did I really pick Auburn? But I believe at home, they're desperate to get a win over an SEC team at home. I don't think LSU is – I don't even know if they're deserving of a ranking at this point. They've struggled. They did beat Mississippi State, but they almost let them come back at the end. The offense is still bland. I like the Auburn running game. I think the home field makes a difference. And then that hot seat will get hot under Les Miles if they lose to Auburn.
Well, this is a game I disagree with you at all. I think LSU wins this game. I mean, I look at what Les Miles has been able to do. I think the best move he could have made was to get Danny Etling in at quarterback. I think obviously he's the right move. He's been able to lead the offense, give them a little bit of a passing attack. We knew all along if LSU Tigers could get a passing attack going, we knew that was going to help open up some lanes for Leonard Fournette. That's really been the key for them because now they've got Fournette back healthy. Now they got him out there to take advantage of the situation, and he can run and find those lanes and get big bursts of running room. I think all that along is going to help them out as well. And I do agree. I think this is a game that whoever loses, the hot seat is going to be super intense moving forward the rest of the season. I don't know if Gus Malzahn, if he loses this game, if he can bounce back unless somehow maybe they beat Alabama at the end of the season. I think for Les Miles, I think they're going to continue to slowly climb up the chart moving forward. But again, what they have on their schedule ahead, a matchup with Alabama, that's really going to be the key factor for them, because a 2-loss team isn't going to get into the college football playoff most likely, even from the SEC. I don't think we'd see that happening. So it's going to be a rough ride for both these two coaches going in, but I like LSU to win it out.
I think it's cute. You're still talking LSU as a potential college football playoff participant.
SEC.
That's just adorable. So sweet. Just get you an LSU T-shirt for even considering that. Number 2, Georgia visits number 23 Ole Miss. 12 o'clock kick on Saturday on ESPN. And you know the story of Ole Miss by now. In their 2 games against top 10 teams, top 5 teams, whatever. They were up 3 touchdowns in both games in the first half. They've lost both games to Florida State and Alabama. Now they get to come home. They get Georgia coming in. Chad Kelly has been good when he's been good. He's thrown 10 touchdown passes. Evan Engram, his tight end, leads the country in catches with 20. But when Ole Miss is bad, it gets bad. And we saw it against Alabama last week, 24-3 up. Next thing you know, it's tied. They were down 18 points for making it respectable at the end at 48-43. Georgia comes in, they're 3-0, but they have not been beating teams. They've won their 3 games by a total of 12 points. I'm going to go with Ole Miss in this one. I think they're finally going to straighten things out. They're at home. The renovations, the grass field, everything is nice at home for them. It didn't work last week. It's going to work this week against Georgia. Georgia hasn't convinced me yet. They're still getting their bearings under Kirby Smart. Isaiah McKenzie's been a nice surprise for them. The kid from Miami with the receiver has over 18 catches, 4 touchdowns. But there hasn't been a lot that has impressed me about Georgia. They've been getting the job done, but just barely. So I think Ole Miss finally rights the ship in the second half and gets the big win over Georgia at home.
Yeah, I have to this is the week where I disagree with you. I mean, I think Georgia wins this game. I mean, you mentioned the fact that Ole Miss has had these second half collapses, giving up 63 points in the second half to FSU and to Alabama. They can't seem to make the adjustments at halftime. Chad Kelly has been pressured 40% of the time he drops back, so far in the first 3 games. So I think he's having trouble, getting that kind of protection that they need to have, for him to find some success. He's putting up big numbers, but still, I like Georgia in this game. I like Kirby Smart defensive mind. I think he's going to try to attack Chad Kelly. I think he's going to try to make sure that he's frazzled. I like the fact that they take a guy like Nick Chubb, maybe take advantage of that running game, kind of build up on that as well. I think Georgia wins this game. I think Ole Miss, this just isn't the year for the Rebels. I think that with everything going on off the field going into the season and the way they've kind of failed to make those second half adjustments, I think this is going to be another tough game for Ole Miss.
Huge game, SEC East implications, because it's the crossover game. Florida crosses over with LSU and Arkansas. Tennessee crosses over with Alabama. These are the tough games that will go. They'll all play each other in the East, but these are the games that could go a long way to determining who represents the East in the SEC title game.
Well, and Georgia gets a win in this game, like we said. again, that's a ranked team. SEC, you continue to boost up your profile. I think that'll continue to help their case as the SEC tries to get maybe 3 or 4 teams in that top 15 range, top 12 range when it comes close to the first college football playoff rankings in early November.
Number 11, Wisconsin visits number 8, Michigan State. 12 o'clock start on Saturday on the Big Ten Network. First meeting between these two schools since 2012. Michigan State on a roll right now against ranked teams, of course, coming off their win in South Bend last weekend against Notre Dame. They've won 10 of 13 against ranked opponents, 6 of their last 7, of course, of the Big Ten, defending champions from last year. And this game is the matchup of the 2 best rushing defenses in all of FBS. Michigan State, 72 yards a game given up on the ground. Wisconsin, 82 yards per game given up on the ground. This will be a Big Ten battle, if you will, at 12 o'clock. And my pick in this game is Michigan State, because they've been doing this, and this isn't something new. They've been able to win these games, these big games against ranked opponents. They just find a way. They did it against Notre Dame. They got a big lead on Notre Dame, held them off at the end. They get this one at home. I like Wisconsin. They were a shock to me to beat LSU, but they're, as they always are, a strong team on the ground, a good defensive team, but Michigan State wins this one at home.
Yeah, this is one I do agree with you. I think Michigan State wins this game. The Spartans are 22-2 in the Big Ten in the last 3 years. Great mark. Again, We talk about this week in, week out. Mark D'Antonio, Michigan State coach, one of the most underrated college football coaches in the country. Everyone wants to talk about Urban Meyer, Ohio State. They want to talk about Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. I don't think he gets enough respect for what he's been able to do at Michigan State. I think they win this game. I think it's a close, low-scoring, Big Ten type of affair. We got the big hosses in the trenches getting there, banging up against each other. I think this is going to be a very thrilling game, but a defensive showdown and a very low-scoring affair, but I like Michigan State in it.
Number 7, Stanford visits UCLA in a Pac-12 game, 8 p.m. Stanford on ABC, national TV primetime game for the second consecutive week. UCLA has lost this matchup, this meeting, 8 straight times. Last time UCLA beat Stanford, 2008. Just amazing. When we run off these stats about Stanford for you and I growing up in college football, to know what Stanford was like for so long. But 8 straight times, Stanford has come out on top of UCLA. And, of course, last year it was Christian McCaffrey running for a school record, 243 yards, 4 touchdowns in the game. So far this year, Christian McCaffrey's doing it again. Maybe not as flashy in the highlight department as he was, but he's already averaging more yards per game than he got last year. He's up to almost 150 yards per game. Stanford showed us more than just McCaffrey last weekend with their win against USC, a solid win against USC. Now they go on the road. I'm going to take Stanford in this one, but this is a game that UCLA has to have been circled on their calendar for a long time, because trying to get that monkey off the back, this won't be as easy as beating USC was, but I'm going to take Stanford by a Christian McCaffrey in this game.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you here. I'm going to take Stanford. This is one of those games, as you mentioned, this is the second straight weekend that Stanford gets a primetime spot. To me, this is the chance for Christian McCaffrey to make his case for the Heisman race. I think, last year, I don't think he got enough attention because those games weren't on primetime. Those games weren't on national television. They were late games. They were West Coast games. He wasn't able to get maybe some of the attention that you normally see from some of the East Coast teams. I think he's got an opportunity here against a team like UCLA. I think he has to take advantage of it, because I really do believe, and when you talk about the Heisman race, and we'll talk about it later, it's only maybe a 1 to 2-man show right now, and I think for McCaffrey, he wants to be able to showcase that he can do more and really help lead this Stanford team. Great. They've done a great job so far, but they've only played 2 games. This is only their 3rd game, so this might help them out a little bit for a team like UCLA that's been a little bit banged up. I don't think Josh Rosen, the UCLA quarterback, has played up to the potential that he played maybe last year. Maybe a lot of some of the expectation kind of weighing on him a little bit, but I like Stanford. I think this is going to be another close one. I think this game will come down, like you said, to maybe a McCaffrey touchdown late.
And maybe without going up against Ohio State, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Michigan State, maybe the viewers can go, because the lower viewers last week for Stanford
were loaded up. Yeah.
Maybe a chance that some can see this kid play, because he's a special player, and it'll be on ABC primetime on Saturday. Arkansas visits Texas A&M, actually visits Arlington, a neutral site game. Number 17 Arkansas, number 10 Texas A&M. This is 9 p.m. on ESPN. And talking about Texas A&M, Myles Garrett, he's a bad man. That guy, that kid, 3 quarterback sacks, 5 quarterback hurries, and just the way he disrupts the game is even a bigger story. Texas A&M looking to go 4-0 for the 3rd consecutive season. If they do that, it'll be the first time since 1939, 1940, and 1941 that Texas A&M has started 3 straight years 4-0. Arkansas, though, comes in this game. Raleigh Williams III, one of only 4 players in Power 5 conferences to have over 350 yards rushing and 3 rushing touchdowns. Arkansas, they are a better team than people may realize. But Texas A&M is a better team than people realize, and I think the difference in this game is going to be Myles Garrett making some big play on defense and causing havoc in that Arkansas backfield and everything, and that'll be the difference, but this is going to be a fun game in Arlington.
Yeah, it will be. I'm going to disagree a little bit. I'm picking Texas A&M to win with you, but I don't think it's going to be so much Myles Garrett. I like Trevor Knight in this game, the A&M quarterback. Yeah, I think one of the best moves that Kevin Sumlin was able to take advantage of was getting a graduate transfer like Trevor Knight. Guy who came in from Oklahoma, had big-time playing experience, played for the Sooners, was able to lead them in their bowl win against Alabama a few years back. That experience has really kind of showcased this team, has helped them out early on. Listen, A&M, last 2 or 3 years, has jumped out to 5-0 starts the last 2 years. They could go 5-0 again. They can't finish the season. I think that's why Kevin Sumlin has found his name on the hot seat. I think he has to continue to win these games, and he has to do it in a way that will showcase what they've been able to do. Arkansas has won 9 out of their last 10 games going back to last year. I think Brett Bielema has done an amazing job with this program, considering the fact you play in the SEC West. I think this will be another opportunity to showcase this game. Again, I think it's going to be a close game. I think that Arkansas will keep it close. But I like Trevor Knight maybe leading the Aggies to the win in this game.
I like you're shocked when we agree. It's not that often this week. Oklahoma visits Baylor, number 16 Baylor, on Saturday night, 7:30 game on Fox. Oklahoma State not ranked, but if they had decent officials against Central Michigan, they'd be ranked coming into this one also.
Big 12 was hoping for that. So
that's why I was on Fox. Baylor looking for their fourth consecutive 4-0 start. They've had 3 easier games to start the year, and they're top 10 in the country in offense and defense after that. But this game is strength versus strength. It's Oklahoma State's passing game, which is 9th in the country. Baylor's passing defense, 3rd in the country. And the key to this game is going to come down to Mason Rudolph, who last weekend, 540 yards passing against Pitt in a game that was delayed for like 2 hours, it seemed, because of lightning in Oklahoma. But if they're able to move the ball through the air, then that will be the key for Oklahoma State. But I'm going to take the home team in this one. It's not an upset. I'm going with Baylor. And Baylor right now, they in West Virginia are the only ones holding on to that Big 12 flag because everybody above them has lost. Oklahoma's lost twice. The Big 12 needs Baylor to keep winning, so the Big 12 gets a good one in this one. They get Baylor to win this one.
Oklahoma State wins this game. I like to see the chaos theory. I like to see Oklahoma State upset Baylor because I want to see what happens with the Big 12. If Baylor loses, I have a funny feeling West Virginia somewhere down the road is going to get lost. Then you have every team in the Big 12 except for Oklahoma that's of the top teams would have one loss, and I think that's going to be a key issue for them moving forward to the college football playoff. I like what you mentioned about Mason Rudolph. I think he's the guy that's going to propel them in this game, help them win. Baylor's early, easy, non-conference schedule really has hurt them, I think, will hurt them in this game because they haven't played anybody. I think this gives an opportunity to play against an Oklahoma State team that's really going to take advantage of some of these issues. And I like the fact that Mike Gundy was able to put behind the whole fiasco with the instant replay with Central Michigan a couple weeks ago, and they got the win last week. So I think he's going to do the same thing again. Maybe a team takes that and uses that as motivation, knowing that they were that close to being undefeated, and you go in and you beat a team like Baylor.
6 games, and we only agree on 3 so far.
That's a
good start.
That's a good day.
3 games that we're going to focus on in the state. One of them, Florida State, heads down to Tampa for a 12 p.m. kickoff. This on ABC, scheduled before the game last week in Louisville. USF 3-0 for the first time since 2011. They've won 10 of their last 12 games. Matches the best stretch of 12 games in USF history. Over the last 7 games, they're averaging over 48 points per game, which is the second highest in the country, and they've rushed for over 200 yards in 8 straight games. The worst thing that happened to USF may have been what happened last week in Louisville, because I think Florida State is going to come in refocused and re-energized and maybe down a peg or 2 from where they are, and realizing they're going to have to work harder and not quit on the field as they did against Louisville last weekend. I like USF as a team. I think they're going to compete in the American. I think they're one of the teams in the American that can give Houston a run. But last weekend woke Florida State up enough that they won't be taking this one lightly heading into it, because I'm guessing, I haven't been around it, but I'm guessing they want to get back out on the field, and they can't wait to get out and right some of the wrongs from last weekend's embarrassing 43-point loss to Louisville. So I'm going Florida State in this game. But don't be surprised if USF has a good showing, because it's a good, I know we're not allowed to say that in Orlando, but this is a good USF football team. Yeah. And they're going to be able to, they have the people to compete with Florida State. I just don't think they have it to make it through the whole game. Florida State gets the win, and maybe a refocused Florida State after that.
See, I think I'm going to take Florida State, but I think USF puts a scare in the Seminoles. I think that if you look at a team you don't want to face if you're Florida State coming off that game against Louisville, is a quarterback similar to Lamar Jackson. And I think Quentin Flowers kind of has that ability. He has the ability to run the ball, scrambler, has the ability to throw the ball. They're an up-tempo style offense, similar to what Louisville was able to do last weekend. I think they're going to try to take advantage of that well. They can use that tape to what Lamar Jackson was able to do and try to take advantage of it. I still think Florida State wins the game, but I think this game could be close. I think it wouldn't be shocked me to see this game go back and forth for a while, because I think both these two teams are got it, and I think USF feels in some slight way that they maybe get a little bit disrespected in this game, even though they know Florida State's coming off that win. What I'm looking forward to from this Seminole team is, how do you bounce back? Do you come out, as you said, and dominate and really take charge and show everyone that you deserve to be that team? You know, that was a fluke game, or that was a game that you really Or do you come out and you just you still look a little bit flat? One of my concerns if I'm Florida State is protecting DeAndre Francois. Again, 40% of his dropbacks, this season he has been hit and pressured. So they need to protect him. I think the offensive line was supposed to be one of their strengths. Hasn't done a very good job protecting him. They got to give him opportunities to find receivers downfield, because that's really what hurt them somewhat against Louisville, was they didn't give him any time to really find those receivers downfield.
And the offense line also not providing holes for Dalvin Cook.
No, Dalvin Cook where is Dalvin Cook gone? I mean, and I feel like, here's a guy who in the first 3 games has not looked anywhere near what we thought he was going to look. And it's not because of injuries, we don't think. They've got to find those holes. They've got to buy him some time, because he's the type of guy who's a big play producing back. And he's a guy who will break free and have a 60, 70-yard touchdown run. We haven't been able to see that kind of Dalvin Cook.
Got a question on Facebook Live, and it's a tongue-in-cheek question, I'm sure. Carlos Allian, will it be a FSU home game on Saturday?
I think it probably will, just because I think there'll be. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of USF fans. There is a lot of buzz in Tampa. There's a lot of buzz across the country for this USF team. I think you look at the fact that everyone assumes Houston's going to be the team to beat, which I still think they are. But people forget USF was picked to win the American East. So, they're a good team. And I still think even if they lose to Florida State, they're still going to be a good team. But I expect this to be a big crowd. I expect it to be loud. And I expect, again, a great showdown in these two teams.
I'd say 50-50 crowd if I had to guess.
I would say 50-50. Yeah, maybe you go 55-45. More towards Florida State if that happens.
UCF visits FIU, 7 p.m. kickoff on Saturday on BN Sports. This is a game you're going to be at. You were at UCF game this past week also against Maryland. Mackenzie Milton getting his second start of his young career for the Knights. He threw for 260 yards last week against Maryland. Both these schools played Maryland. UCF took Maryland into double OT. FIU got just manhandled by Maryland. FIU, heading in this game, they have given up over 400 yards of total offense to their opponents in all 3 games. This is not a good FIU team. It is not a good FIU defense. If you are UCF, this season's gone maybe how you thought it would. You had the win against South Carolina State in the opener. You maybe struggled against number 5 Michigan in the second game, and then you battled with a Big Ten team, Maryland. This is a game now. They should win. But the offense should be able to test some of these things and see how they work against a defense that they should be able to do what they want to do against. A good test for Milton, I think, to come in and see and have a chance to kind of continue to fit in that offense against a defense that shouldn't give him that much difficulty. I'm picking UCF in this one. Revenge from last year, the embarrassing loss to the open of the season that kind of just started the whole downward spiral. But UCF, I think if this game is close, it's a bad thing for UCF because FIU is just lacking in talent, especially on the defensive end.
Yeah, I think I got UCF in this game. I think UCF is where I expected them to be at this point. Like as you mentioned, they got the win against South Carolina State. They lost the 2 games to the Big Ten opponents. I think this is a game that they have to have just moving forward as you get into the American Conference schedule because, you want to come in at 2-2. You want to show some improvement. I think we saw some good things out of Mackenzie Milton and some potential for the future, what you want to see this offense, what Scott Frost's offense is going to look like for the Knights. But I also think we saw some bad things. We saw a lot of freshmen, being a freshman quarterback, making a lot of bad decisions when it came to fumbles, making a lot of bad decisions, trying to do too much with the football. Some of the coaching staff mentioned yesterday after practice that it was almost left, he thinks he's still back in high school a little bit, that he can outplay some of the guys. You're at a different level now. You've got to get up to that. I think one thing that will help him this week is he was named the starter early on in the week, so every practice he's the guy going in. He knows what's going to happen. I think they'll give him a better opportunity to get prepared for this game. He seems a pretty down-to-earth type of kid. He doesn't really seem like he was making too much of the fact that he's got the start. I like the offense. I think the offense is going to do well and put up a lot of rushing yards. Defensively, they've been able to attack. I think they did a lot of that against Maryland. If they can cut down the turnovers and some of the mistakes that they're making, especially with penalties when it comes to false starts, times when they want to hurry up and get to the line and guys make a dumb move, if they cut that down, UCF should win this game pretty convincingly.
And really a 2-2 start with a tight game against Maryland going into the season is what you would have hoped for, I think, if you're UCF.
Yeah, 2-2 was what I think I would expect for them, especially going into the American schedule.
Of course, Matt will be at that game on Saturday night. And finally, the final game we're going to talk about, the game of the week. Number 19, Florida visits number 14, Tennessee. 3:30 kickoff on CBS. ESPN Game Day has picked this to be their spot. the 9th time ESPN Game Day has gone to a Florida-Tennessee game. It is their most traveled or most picked rivalry in game day history. And we had some fun when Florida played Kentucky, and we played songs and shows back from the last time Kentucky had beaten Florida. And I was going to do it with Tennessee, and I didn't even know what the song was, so I scrapped that idea. But the last time Tennessee beat Florida was September 18th, 2004. But this isn't really that crazy of a trend. Since 1971, Florida is 24-6 against Tennessee. I mean, in our lifetime, we've only seen Tennessee's only won 6 times against Florida. They've played a lot in that time. But Tennessee comes into this game. They've won 9 straight games dating back. They're going for their double-digit win streak, 12th in school history. And Austin Allenby will get the start for Florida. 3rd time in 4 seasons the backup quarterback has started against UT. It didn't matter the first 2 times. It's going to matter this time. This one's at Tennessee. I am taking the Volunteers in this one. I believe that this is a game they've been ready for. They still have some issues. They struggle with Appalachian State. They didn't look great against Ohio. I watched a lot of that game. They're still working things out. The key is always going to be Florida's defense, because the offense can still sputter and start. It looked great one week. It didn't look so hot against North Texas, but the defense was brutal. But this one's in Tennessee, 100,000 plus people in that crazy orange, taking Tennessee to end the streak, and then I don't have to worry about looking up any song next year for how long it's been since Tennessee beat Florida, because the last time it will have been this year. Tennessee gets the job done.
Florida wins this game. I'm sorry. I mean, you could throw in a backup quarterback, you could whatever. If you look at this Gators defense right now, it is playing outstanding. And granted, you look at the fact they've played teams like Kentucky and UMass and North Texas, but their defense has been right in the backfield in every game. They've been causing disruptions. Tennessee has yet to impress me. They haven't looked good at all. They struggled against a Ohio team last week, which they should have won convincingly, and that was at home. So again, you're looking at teams. Tennessee's offensive line can't stop anyone. Florida can get in the backfield, cause all sorts of disruptions. The secondary is going to be a factor for them as well. I think Austin Appleby is a different type of quarterback, and something different that Tennessee is prepared for going in. He's a guy that could scramble. He's a guy that could run the football. He's a guy that gives them a different dimension maybe that Luke Del Rio gives. I think they're going to run the ball and take advantage of that situation as well. I think Florida wins this game. I think the Gators win by 1 point for the 3rd straight year.
And probably a kicker, perhaps.
Probably a kicker. It'll come down to special teams at this point. So.
We do have 2 Twitter questions before we get that. One, a follow-up Facebook Live question from Carlos. He says UCF is a 6.5-point favorite. I don't know favorites, but he wants our prediction on the score for UCF.
Oh, a score? Wow. I'd be surprised if UCF doesn't score at least 20 points. Maybe we're looking at 28, 21, maybe 34, 28, something around that range. I don't go into, like you, I'm not a big point spread guy. But again, I think UCF's going to win, and I think they'll win kind of convincingly.
Yeah, I'm going to say UCF 35-10.
Take the points. Is that what they say? Take the points. Just do that.
Give the points, take them.
Give
I
the
don't
points,
know what it
take
means.
them.
I don't know gambling stuff. We do have some Twitter questions. We're going to start one from Z-Flaw. He asked you, Matt, how will Nebraska do against Northwestern?
I think Nebraska wins against Northwestern.
Yeah, I was like, that's the easiest question we'll get all week.
I mean, you look
it's
at
a cakewalk.
I think you look at what Nebraska has done this year. They're 3-0. I commend Mike Riley. They've done an amazing job, not only on the field, but look at all the situations that happen off the field. They lose their kicker to a tragedy, a car wreck that he was killed in. That alone, obviously hangs over the program. He's been able to get his players focused. They've won football games. I think Tommy Armstrong Jr. has looked good. Finally, he's been able to embrace the Mike Riley offense. I think defense, they've been outstanding. Listen, they beat an Oregon team last week that we thought, Oregon was probably going to be in that game, and probably would have been if they hadn't kept going for 2. But again, winning close games, that's something that they weren't able to do last year. I think Mike Riley and this team is finding a way to do that now. I feel bad for Northwestern. Again, a team that I didn't expect to lose the first 2 games. They beat a bad Duke team last week. I think playing against Nebraska, I think Nebraska wins easily by a touchdown or so.
Oh, yeah. The only risk here is Nebraska coming down too much from beating Oregon.
Yeah, it would be the only. But
even
then I don't. As much as I like to see, I just don't see. Northwestern hasn't impressed me at all. And even though they're winning last week, I think there's too many problems they have in their team. I think Nebraska's playing well right now.
And the last question, and this was actually came during our show last week, but it was so good we carried it over. Tyler Russell asked, who's getting a Heisman this year? And you touched upon this earlier. There's just a couple names in the Heisman race, and after week 3, anybody watching can name them. But I'll let you go ahead and name the favorites and maybe some of the guys that we're not following that could still get into there.
Well, I think it's got, obviously, Louisville's Lamar Jackson is the favorite. This is interesting. I was doing some research this week, and I found this stat up. Lamar Jackson has been responsible for 108 points of Louisville's offense this year. I look back, the last 5 quarterbacks to win the Heisman finished with average of about 300 points responsible for their teams. So we're 3 games into the season, and Lamar Jackson has that many. He has almost a third of that. I think if he keeps on that pace, I think he's going to be right there, especially if Louisville continues to win. I talked about this off camera. Their schedule really is pretty easy. I mean, they're going to have a challenge against Clemson and they'll have a challenge against Houston. Those are the 2 games. If they upset Clemson and he continues to have a good game, I don't see anyone really upending him as the Heisman. The person that probably could at the point we've talked about is Stanford's Christian McCaffrey, just because of the fact that he's able to touch the ball in many different ways, not only rushing the ball as a running back, receiving the ball, kick returns, and all that. I think that'll help him. I'm going to throw a name out I think people are going to start paying more attention to in the next couple of weeks is Michigan's Jabril Peppers. I think he's a guy right now that after last week, we saw a punt return. I think it was like 54 yards for a touchdown. He's also had, I think it was a career high with 9 tackles and tackles for loss. He's a guy right now, because he plays on defense, he gets that defensive side of the football. He also plays now on offense. He's doing some running. He's doing some receiving. And then he returns kicks. I think that's the only way a defensive player ever wins the Heisman. He's one as well. And then I'm going to look at San Diego State running back Danielle Pumphrey, a guy who's really kind of not been heard of much, but leads the country in rushing right now. Rushed for over 1,600 yards last year. Had back-to-back games this season with 200 yards. I think he's a guy that will have a strong showing statistically, but because they don't play in the Power 5 conference, because they don't play any more Power 5 opponents, I think it's going to be hard for him to get up there and win. I think especially with guys like Jackson and Peppers and McCartney.
My family's going to pull their Thanksgiving invitation. You forgot a guy, JT Barrett.
Well, I think Barrett. Barrett's has a strong season. I think he needs another big game somewhere along the road, somewhere where it will kind of keep him up there as well. I think, unfortunately for Barrett, he's just been overshadowed. I mean, you look at a guy like Lamar Jackson. It's Lamar all the week long. Now, I caution everybody. We talked about. We saw this with Leonard Fournette last year. I mean, halfway through the season, it was Fournette was going to win the Heisman, and then he ran into Alabama, and they held him to 34 yards, and then after that, it was just all downhill. He wasn't able to bounce back from that. So I think Lamar Jackson now needs to continue to have strong outings, even against weaker opposition, because I think that's going to only help build him up and build up his stats. And I think that, having some national games against Clemson and Houston are going to help him.
Let's not beat around the bush. You got to win. And if Louisville wins out, he's going to be in it. And if they lose 2 games, then he's all of a sudden out of the race. If Ohio State continues to play like they're playing,
and that's what I mean.
And they win out, then JT Barrett. I mean, Lamar Jackson might be the best player in college football, but if they lose to Clemson, all of a sudden it's going to be on him, and he's going to lose credit for that. And it's not fair, but the Heisman has turned into the best player on one of the top 2 or 3 teams.
And you don't have to always be undefeated to win the Heisman. I mean, obviously that's not the case. I mean, you have to just have a good, strong showing. But considering how much he runs the offense, and again, Heismans are always also about highlights. They're also about what can you. He's already got one Heisman highlight. You do that kind of thing again. If you look impressive, I got to tell you, if Louisville beats Clemson, maybe not even a half as convincing as they did Florida State, I still think he gets a big push for that as well. That's why I mentioned earlier, it's so important for a guy like Christian McCaffrey to have a great showcase on a national televised primetime game, because not many people are going to get to see him once they get into that Pac-12 schedule later on, when they're not playing teams maybe that aren't ranked at the time.
I think Christian McCaffrey is probably the best player in the country, and I don't think he's going to win the Heisman. So
and last year he should have won the Heisman, but didn't, because the best couple 2 or 3 games were right at the end of the season when they don't really consider that.
That's it. It's what are we at? Week 4 coming up.
Week 4 coming up.
Week 4 coming up. It's going so fast.
Keep sending your questions in, please. Those are good questions.
Those are great questions. Thank you, Zifla. And thank you, Tyler. And we take questions throughout the week on Twitter, and we'll answer them every Wednesday when we do the show live. For Matt Murcell, I'm Brant Parsons. Thanks for watching College Football Now at OrlandoSentinel.com.